You are the new media, as Draymond would say. Or are you old media?
Yeah.
Like Stephen A.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in between.
Okay.
I feel like I'm media. For one, I refer to myself as a journalist. I think there's flaws in the old media, and I think there's flaws in the new media. And I think they actually I think it's great to have both because they balance each other out. And what I mean by that is like the new media. So let's just use the Draymond example and the fact that like every NBA player has a podcast today now, right?
Man.
For one, I do think that it's super dope to be able to hear the perspectives of people that are like in the field. And I think that's kind of what I spoke to when it came to like the advocacy part, where I'm a journalist, but now that I'm in the field and I'm doing more advocacy, in some ways, like I can cover what it is that I'm like actively involved in a way that's a little bit more intimate than me just asking somebody questions and getting answers from them. So I respect that side of it. But there is also a part of it where it's like the NBA is a fraternity. So we're not going to always get the real from Draymond, and there's certain questions or topics that's going to be avoided from these athletes because they're not going to out each other.
They're not going to mess their money up.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to mess their money up. They're not going to out each other or any of those things, where you need somebody like a Stephen A. Smith or somebody that's a journalist that are going to ask the hard questions, or that are going to ask the unpopular questions, or give the unpopular opinions to give that balance where we can get a legitimate reaction from these people that are the subject, but that are also now media that they won't touch at all in their own way. So for me, I like to say I'm just media, but again, there's also flaws in the old media as well, where Stephen A., I feel like, to use him as since you use him as the example of old media, I personally feel like Stephen A. is at an interesting crossroads right now because Stephen A. has for a long time had to adapt to an industry that doesn't particularly look like him or identify with him.
Interesting.
And so with that, he's been able to make it so far in the media space, adapting to their ways. And he's often tried to tell the people that he does identify with, well, this is how I got here by doing things this particular way, because this is sort of the way of the industry. So you either get with it or good luck. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like because we do now have the influence of the new media, everybody has a platform now. That old way of doing things and what the media used to look like, that Stephen A. sort of adapted to, that led to him being as successful as he is now, is kind of dated. So he's almost trying to like backtrack in a way to where it's like Stephen A. is just now doing a podcast. I've been doing a podcast for 5-6 years. Ain't no way Stephen A. shouldn't have been doing one for 5-6 years, but he just launched one a couple months ago. But I think it's because he's seeing the way that the landscape of media at large is changing. And so now he's almost playing catch up in a way, and it's making it to where a lot of his stances that have all been on camera, because he's on TV every day, are starting to contradict what it is that he's now trying to pursue and attempt. So he's kind of being criticized in ways that he feels like he shouldn't be, but it's because you took the route that they would want you to take. You were willing to play by their rules. And now that the rules are changing and the landscape is changing, you're trying to figure out, how do I backtrack from some of the things that led me to where I am today?
Which days you talking about, because we got to be careful. Well, we don't want to get Jamie Foxxed, okay?
Which days?
Which days, yeah.
When you say they, like as far as,
I'm just joking around.
No. I mean, I guess when I say they, I mean more so like the
majority.
When I say they, I'm more so speaking about the industry itself, and the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, it's a predominantly white industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so Stephen A has had to adapt to a predominantly white industry in a way that in some cases may make him look like a sellout now that predominantly white industry is being challenged in new ways. And so now he's got to backtrack from some of that stuff that led him to be able to have success in that predominantly white industry, because the industry is starting to diversify in a lot of ways.
Do you feel when it comes to media, selling out happens quickly to be in that industry, or now it's changed to where people are just able to just be?
I still think selling out happens on both sides of the field. Like I've said, in a way, like to me, that's selling out too. The fact that, as somebody who, and myself, is more of a traditionally trained journalist, like if we're not getting to the bottom of a situation, which is the point of like being like an investigative journalist, if you will, because of this fraternity or whatever it is that you're trying to protect, like that's selling out to me as well from what I identify as a journalist.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like both sides, I think, sell out. And that's also a reason why I operate under the belief of there is no, you know how they say like journalism isn't supposed to be biased. I operate under the belief there is no such thing as unbiased journalism. And I was able to just speak to how both sides can be biased in their own ways, even though they're competing against each other, trying to prove which one is actually not being biased. You know what I'm saying? But y'all are both being biased. So that's why I don't lean into either one of them. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, yeah, I don't operate that way. With the new media has its flaws too, just like the old media has had its flaws, but they're competing against each other, but they both still got their own flaws.
I'm so glad you said this because, from time to time on the show, we become a sports podcast, and I think I have the greatest sports takes of all time. And I'm just saying this, but I've always run with the moniker of we're all hypocrites. Like we will eventually all contradict ourselves. So I would rather tell you I'm gonna be a hypocrite.
Definitely.
But you know what? I'm about to test you, journalist, Mr. Journalist.
Talk to me.
So you get a LeBron interview,
right?
And I'm talking about full LeBron interview.
We just did some quick fact checking about your takes on sports.
Yeah.
It is false.
Okay.
we actually have a fact checker.
Okay.
So they'll from time to time check us on the fact, make sure that we're staying within bounds. So if I go too wild, I say this is just my opinion.
Yeah. And
then if I say something off, they give me with the facts. But all facts, I'm the greatest of all time. But anyway,
I'm here for whatever, man.
So if you get a LeBron interview, right?
Yeah.
And no softball questions. You get down to the straight journalism. What question do you know we all want to ask him that you would ask him?
That I would ask LeBron?
Yes.
It definitely wouldn't be a GOAT question. For me, I would probably more so dig into. So LeBron has had this image of being like clean slated. I don't think no human or no individual has that clean of a slate.
Oh, he a journalist.
So for me, I would ask LeBron, let's get human here. Like, what has been, and it doesn't even have to be something that you've actually done that's dirty, but what's a temptation or something that you fight against that goes against this narrative that LeBron is just the perfect guy, because he kind of gets viewed as the perfect athlete. And so, I said, it's not just what act. I don't even particularly need you to tell on yourself, but it's come on, man. We all got our flaws. You know what I mean?
We all.
What's a temptation that you have to fight against that goes against the stigma of LeBron being the perfect human as well as an athlete?
ESPN, y'all laying people off. I found I'm gonna tune in. Skip, you need somebody next to you.
Yeah, sir.
I was really testing you.
Yeah.
Because I'll just say this, and they know this, and I know you about to say something. They know this. We're I know KD. KD's one of my favorite players, but I already know he do suck at shit. So my thing is I'm not a blind follower. I'm just come on, KD. I wish you would have done something different.
Right.
And I would say that stuff to his face. I would never compromise. There's stuff I've said about I think Lillard should be doing this. If I met with him across the way, keep it the G, I'm gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
To your face.
For sure.
And I respect the shit. Because I was gonna say, is he a journalist?
Because Draymond would never ask him that question.
He wouldn't.
But that's the point that I'm getting at about the fraternity.
Yeah.
Even another thing that I was very critical of Draymond about, Draymond, you got the #1 sports podcast in the world. How long did it take for him to say anything about him in the Jordan Poole incident? He stopped the whole podcast and just avoided it. I understand why. It's a lot of money at stake. It's business at stake. It's the fraternity at stake. I understand why, but for me as a traditionally trained journalist, I don't respect it because I identify with being a journalist in that way where we can get to the bottom of this. He still tiptoes around that subject in a lot of ways.
I think he always will.
I agree, and I understand why. But at the same time, that's one of the flaws that I speak of, and that's one of the biases that I speak of when it's like both sides are flawed, in my opinion, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I have my biases. Like, I'm not knocking either side for it, but it's like you're clearly going to have bias if you're old media, and 80% of the people identify as the same, usually white male. Like, there's going to be biases that come with coverage, mainstream coverage, when everybody identifies as the same or the majority identifies as the same. And the same goes for the NBA. It's a 75% black league. Like, we're going to get their perspectives from their lens, and they're doing it because they're rebuttaling against somebody that identifies as opposite as them, but they're falling into the same traps and flaws that the people that they're rebuttaling and that they don't identify with have fell into in this space.
That's crazy. That's such crazy information, even like beginning to think about, but it's real.
It's real.
Like, it's real.
It's almost in the light of, I would watch a 40 for 40,
30 for 30.
Thank you. Sorry, I was having a brain fart. As soon as it came out of mine, I was like, "That's wrong." I would have a 30 for 30 with Mark Jackson, because I'll just say this: even though rumorly we know what he said, but hey, we ain't getting canceled by the days. Anywho, all I'm just saying is I would love to know how he's feeling and how he truly feels going from coaching arguably one of the greatest teams of all time.
Yeah.
Saying Steph and Clay was going to be this, and then they did it, and then getting his job taken by Steve Kerr and still not getting picked up by the NBA.
Yeah.
I would love for someone to have like a real conversation with him, because I know he has so much to say.
Yeah.
And those are the stories that will never come to light and that are in the fraternity.
It's in the fraternity. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, again, I get it. As somebody that, I played college ball, which, is an achievement in itself. Yeah. Most people don't get to make it that far to be able to play NCAA basketball. You know what I'm saying? And there's certain things, it's like locker room talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain things that's not supposed to leave the locker room.
Man.
So it's certain things that's still happening in the locker room that they'll never talk about on their podcast. These athletes that now have podcasts, you know what I'm saying? And I get it, because I know what it's like to be in a locker room and how that works. You know what I'm saying? And a locker room is sacred in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? But there's a bias in that still, and that has to be acknowledged, I believe.
And I think a podcast who gets pretty close is All the Smoke podcast. They get pretty close to those tough conversations, and
I agree.
And those, but I think they are sliding more into that fraternity aspect of what you're talking about, and trying to save grace on certain people, only putting out certain things or not the whole thing for people to hear. Which is, it's pretty interesting to, as you talk about that and open up that whole. I never dove completely into it. I knew there's always like perspective and bias when it comes to people anyway. So that's always gonna play a factor when it comes to conversation as a whole. So.
Yeah, I just think it's an industry that will never be unbiased, but we're always told like journalism is supposed to be just that. And it's just I don't operate by that, which is why I'm able to take, even though like I said I'm traditionally trained, I still take sort of a non-traditional route in this space, because I've learned that, there's still ethics, of course, but I don't have to operate the old way or the new way. because again, it's all flawed. It all has its own biases. So I operate in the way that I feel most comfortable, and I'll admit and lean into the fact that I can be a biased journalist at times before somebody else has to call it out like I, in a way, just called out the new media, I guess, and the old, for that matter.
Everybody else.
And old.
You've gained a strong follower. I cannot. like, okay, y'all gonna roast me for this. But this is why sometimes, hate him or love him, you gotta love Skip Bayless. He knows his fucking role. He's the out of bounds. LeBron James is like, look here, man. That's his family. Leave him alone. Like, but he'll go there.
But see,
he'll go far. He'll go too far.
He'll go too far.
But that's a person who he just knows he's a heel.
But see, I would respect Skip more if he just
said it.
I go too far, and you know what I'm saying? He'll just dig his heels deeper and deeper and deeper, and going too far and making it seem like, oh, I'm right and you're wrong, rather than this is just how I feel, man. And like, hate it, love it, whatever the case may be. Like, I'll communicate it, but he won't admit that, like, there can be a bias in that, whatever that bias may be, whether it's your Michael Jordan bias, whether it, you know what I mean, whether
Brady.
it's what you identify as, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I feel like he don't acknowledge that enough, so he digs his heels in so deep without acknowledging, well, like, yeah, this is how I feel because of X, Y, and Z.
I think it's societal fear of not being able to go back on your word of saying something. And it's like this apology factor. Like, we want to like say something and then be able to be like, oh, I apologize for this.
Right.
And I think it shows prevalence huge in media to where people just, they don't speak their full mind. They speak part of it.
Yeah.
And so you get a gist of what I'm saying, but you don't get the full aspect of how I actually wanted to say this.
Yeah.
And so I think, like y'all talking about Skip, and that's where he is. He's like, let me push the line, but I want to be able to, I can backpedal and apologize or say this
No, I really appreciate that you brought that up. And like, we gotta go into like early like childhood. Like, I don't have kids, but it's almost kind of like in the sense of like when people like talk about like, we're talking about community, we're talking about role modeling. I feel like a lot more people learn from what you're doing rather than what you're saying. And it's almost kind of like if you see your parents or you see someone you look up to, you'd be like, you know what? I blew that layup. If Ben Simmons was just saying like, yeah, man, I got mental health problems, or James Harden be like, you know what? I'm at the club every fucking night. It would just people would be like, I appreciate that authenticity of you being yourself. Where like, I think PG, I don't like his podcast. I'll say that. Look here, it's trash.
Yeah.
But he
podcast
said, whoa, that name's got to change too. He said one gold nugget, and I got it from like a clip on Instagram, but he was talking about how when he went to the Clippers, he had to figure out that you can't win a championship with just me. And I respected the stuff out of that, where I'm kind of like, why don't you just say it? I'm not that person. I'm not that guy. But in my role 2 guy, if I'm the number 2, we got this. We got this.
Yeah.
I respect that. So I love this conversation.
Yeah, man. Like I said, man, I don't know, man. I don't fall into it, man. Like, if I had to say who I identify more with, it would probably be a Draymond. I'm a black man, he a black man. I play ball, he plays ball. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I get a lot of his sentiments. I understand them. But at the same time, like, I also understand the other side of the game, and like I'm always about wanting to know more and learn more. I like Draymond as a podcaster. I don't particularly like Draymond's podcast. Not because he's not a good podcaster, but because what I really want him to tell me, he's never going to tell me.
Yeah.
He's never going to tell me the ins and outs of I want to know about especially as somebody that's from the Bay and rocks with the Warriors. Like, I want to know what's really going on with the Warriors. Instead, you're going to tell me about every other team in the league. And I can watch you play and know that you're a brilliant basketball mind. So what you tell me about every other team in the league, I'm willing to listen to that because, again, just for me watching you play. But I personally am more interested in your team and what's happening in your locker room and what's your strategy. But I also understand you can't tell me that. You know what I'm saying? Because you have other interests that supersede this podcast that you have to protect. And I understand that part of it too, but it doesn't feed me the way that I want to be fed personally. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's just how I feel.
That's deep.
That's just how I feel. You know what I'm saying? Because I care about your team more than I care about what your take is on every other team in the league, but I'm never gonna get the in-depth truth about your team, and I understand why, but still doesn't work for me, particularly as a consumer.
Ooh,
And that's my choice to make, baby.
we might have to have you on a mid-season during the season because
man, we can do this anytime, bro.
It's gonna be fun.
Please, we
can do this anytime, man. You could tell I just have fun with it. I just like to kick it and talk about it.
It's big, especially your mind. Your mind is especially the journalist aspect, the basketball aspect, and just how you attach it so much to just the game. And like you said, you throw it all across in all aspects.
That's why I even love what I do as a broadcaster. Like I get to take care of my own personal needs in so many different ways. At Portland State, I'm an analyst, so I'm doing color, which means that I get to tell more of my opinion about the game, but I also played the game. I played college basketball, so I feel like I, in a lot of ways, have a right to have an opinion about it the same way a lot of these athletes feel like they have a right to have an opinion about a game that they were once a part of.
Speak on that, because I think we have a lot of broadcasters who ain't never played the game.
Yeah. And
try and speak on a game like they've played the game.
Right.
And don't really know the ins and outs.
For sure. No, like I said, in that case, I feel more comfortable being an analyst being that I played college basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel more comfortable being a college basketball analyst or any level at that matter because I know I'm in a very small percentage of people that actually played at the level that I was even able to play at. Obviously, there's even levels above that. But then at the same time, I went to school for journalism. I went to school for general media. So at Pacific, I do play-by-play. And I'm not the analyst at Pacific. But it's cool because I get to kind of be more like straight up and down. Don't get me wrong. I still got my sauce and I'm able to throw in, my opinions here and there, but not nearly. That's not what you coming to me for as a play-by-play voice as you are as when I'm being an analyst on the call. So it's like I get to kind of feed more of that like traditionally trained journalist that went through the rigorous academic part of that of being a journalist as well, and I can just kind of be as straight up and down and as buttoned up as I want to be as a play-by-play voice. So it's cool because I get to work kind of both muscles in two different ways at the respective schools. So, I think, there is a lot of people that don't know much about the game, that have an opinion about the game, which is great because I think it just shows how interested people are in the game, which in turn will ultimately probably be better for the economics of the game. So I don't knock people that don't play the game or haven't played the game that has an opinion or a take about the game. I invite all to have an opinion or have a take about the game, but you just might end up crossing paths with somebody that know a little more about it and how you gonna handle it when that pressure is on. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like a lot of those people tend to fold when they get put in certain rooms that ain't just you being behind a keyboard and posting some shit on Twitter or on your social media. It's like, now face it. Now you got such and such right in front of you. You know what I mean? Can you handle it now? Yeah. And that's when you get to see a lot of people's true colors and they're not really able to handle it, or what it is they say on social media or on Twitter, they're not willing to say in somebody's presence in real life that actually got experience doing this shit.
Bang!
You know what I mean?
Mama, there goes that man.
For sure. So it's like, yeah, a lot of people are bold in places that they can be bold, but when they get in the rooms that, all right, be bold in such and such's face, who you've been talking shit about and name calling
Alabama.
you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you've been name calling this dude, talking about how trash this dude is and all of that. And it's like, you fucked around and got yourself in the same room as him. Are you going to keep that same energy? Because if you're not, then I sort of kind of lose respect for whatever your take is, whether I agree with it or not.
Well, I'll keep it a band. Russell Westbrook, you cost me some money, and you cost KD some championships, and I'll tell you that to your face. Respectfully.
If you tell him that to his face,
respectfully,
I have no problem with you having a take. But
now,
if you're not willing to if you're willing to say that on this podcast, but you're not willing to say that to Russ face to face, then that's when I have more of a problem.
I've been a Thunder fan for a while, so I think I've earned my stripes to be like, look here, man.
I get it,
but I will say this: I don't condone them talking about your wife and your kid
for sure.
But I'm gonna talk about some of the wild plays. I'll tell you about that. But
young Russ,
young Russ. I'm not gonna say James Harden holders, but Kendrick Perkins, he needs to come off that Thunder series is a different
Big Perk.
Big Perk call us and them refs, but that's all I'm gonna say in that Heat Thunder series. I remember that. I broke a lamp. So I got a lot to say about that series.
I feel it.
Man. So as we turn the page, man, this is something that we definitely got to continue to do, something we got to continue to have. Let the people know as we wrap up, let the people know how they can get a hold of you, see you, pull up, what days you DJing, and
yeah. Man,
you in
the
pavilion.
I got you though. I got you. Man.
Hey, he be in the streets. He outside.
I do be outside.
Hey,
I be outside. You know, I'm usually working.
Streets.
I'm usually working when I'm outside though, but I'm outside is it's money in the streets and it can't be ignored.
Absolutely.
But with that said, that's that Bay game right there, man. That's we ain't even take it there today. But anyway, you can follow me on the socials. My name is Devon Pouncey. My @ is Pounce_Sation. I'm always usually more so posting on like my stories, wherever it is I'm gonna be, whether it's DJ gigs, you can check the stories for that. I post those all the time. Obviously, if it's a game coming up or I'm in season, I post, when the broadcast will be based on whatever the game schedule is, how you can watch it. If it's Portland State, subscribe to ESPN Plus. You can hear me on the call there. If it's Pacific, they do more of a live stream. We might be doing more TV actually for Pacific this year.
Let's
go. So we're figuring that piece out though.
Yeah.
We kind of had a little bit of a hiccup. I'll just say it, like we had a partnership with Coin 6 that was supposed to be starting for football season for like the home games, but no fault of ours or even theirs, they just got like a new national TV deal. It was a local partnership, obviously. Yeah. They got a new national TV deal with the ACC. So I don't know how that's gonna impact us being able to do what, you know what I mean? It's just is what it is. It comes with the territory of it. But you can still check out the live stream on GoBoxers.com and stuff like that. I'm always posting whatever the upcoming gig or engagement is. My podcast, Wake Up and Win with Devon Pouncey, you can subscribe to it.
Yeah.
I try to drop weekly, but honestly, sometimes I'll be so busy that I just may not be able to get to it, but usually it's weekly. I'll have an episode out this week for sure. Go subscribe, check it out. I appreciate y'all for having me, man.
It's been nothing but a blessing. You got something to say?
I'll just say, and then I'll let you take care of it. But no, I really appreciate it. Nah, man, you are a wealth of knowledge. You're funny. You got your You
I got my ways about me. You
got 5-6 years in the game. I feel it. I feel it.
You know what I mean? I put a lot of hours in.
So I want to say thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me. For real.
Man, you already know it's been a blessing. It's been been well overdue, man. I can't be mad at that at all. It was well worth it. And we'll see you back on the show. And make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell. It is free. If you want to donate to $Hero There you go, on time this time. You know,
Always on time.
be ready to go. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We out. Peace.
Probably wondering if I think of you. Sorry, I'm for the bag right now. Yeah, I'm for the bag right now. Yeah, for the bag that I never had. Yeah, you probably mad right now. Yeah, I got a 2-piece now. But shit, I think they call them groupies now.